During my playthrough of The Last of Us Part 2, I spent the whole time waiting for this story-ruining, game-breaking event that would completely kill my faith in it like it did so many others. A good friend of mine who had looked at the leaks assured me I would know what everyone meant when I saw it, but the damnedest thing happened. I didn't have a fucking clue. So naturally I took to the internet to see what all the fuss was about, and it's safe to say most of the arguments I've seen are flawed to say the least. Now, before I begin, a quick disclaimer. Obviously, massive spoiler alert. Although I expect if you're clicking on this video, you probably know them already. And then also, I'm not here to start any beef with anyone. I'm just disagreeing with people. When we're adults, we're mature, we can have a discussion. Just because I disagree with this person, I hold no malice towards him. I'm simply disagreeing with him. Okay, anyway, let's get into it. The video I'll be tackling today is called The Last of Us 2, a complete failure of storytelling. I chose that video because with a title like that, I thought the man would know a thing or two about storytelling. During my playthrough, I never really picked out elements of the narrative I'd consider bad storytelling, so I was curious to see what points he'd make. And this is his argument.
PewDiePie was playing this game. I'm going to show you a clip that shows you exactly why this is a massive failure in storytelling.
Abby's gonna die, Abby's gonna die, I hate that bitch, I hate that bitch, Abby's gonna die, Abby's gonna die, fuck that bitch, Abby's gonna die, I'm gone.
Okay, now there's the clip, and it's 100% spot on.
Okay, I'm kidding. This is what he really says.
Once Abby kills Joel, you are very angry at Abby. And at that point in time, the payoff is, through this long story, through this journey, you want to kill Abby. You want to see Abby suffer. You want to see her suffer bad. It's a simple little thing in storytelling that should not be complicated.
Okay, so his point is that it's a revenge story in which we don't get revenge at the end. We don't get to avenge Joel by killing Abby. This is something that he describes as a very simple thing in storytelling. So let's talk simple storytelling. As a film student, one of the first things I learnt about writing characters is that a character should have something that they want and also something that they want but they didn't know that they wanted. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is that quite often in stories, what the character thinks they want at the beginning of the story isn't what they get. Like, I agree, at the start, I was sat there right with Ellie, I was thinking, I want to fucking kill Abby. But, throughout the story, your perspective is altered. He says it himself, he says at that point in time that's what the payoff is. No mention whatsoever that what may seem like a good payoff at the beginning of the story may be very different by the end. So let's look at a prime example of a character's objective at the beginning of the film completely changing throughout the course of the movie because of the character arc they go through. The example we'll be looking at today is none other than Pixar's Up, a film about an old man trying to move his house to Paradise Falls. Well, at least that's what he wants to do at the beginning of the film. At the beginning, it's established that him and his wife wanted to go live in Paradise Falls. At that point, the payoff, you would think, would be that he goes and lives out the rest of his days in Paradise Falls. But, throughout the story, he learns to move on and let go. He's literally been tethered to the past the whole time through the story. It's been weighing him back. It's a visual metaphor with his house. He decides to let that go. At the beginning, the thought of him letting go of him and his wife's dream, after you see that heart-wrenching montage of him and his wife, the last thing you'd think that he'd want to do is leave it all behind. But his arc of moving on caused him to make this decision. And it's good. It's a good arc. Now that I've demonstrated the very simple thing in storytelling, that what a character wants at the beginning of a story may be completely different to where their character arc leads them, I hope you're starting to understand how flawed this argument really is. Like, come on, it even happens in the Cars, where Lightning McQueen thinks he wants to win the race, but because he learns to be selfless and whatever, throughout his arc, he lets the other one win. Like, we're talking Cars here, that's how simple this is. He then goes on to bring up this example from Superman.
Do you remember that scene in Superman 2? Do you remember when Clark walked into that diner and he didn't have his powers? He was there with Lois. Rocky walks in the bar, the truck driver, arrogant as hell, beats the hell out of Clark. There is nothing more satisfying than when Superman returns at the end of that movie with his powers back and he beats the hell out of Rocky. Well, in The Last of Us Part 2, we don't get that.
The example he gave simply doesn't apply here. This is due to the simple fact that Superman is morally black and white. There are good guys and there are bad guys. The Last of Us is morally ambiguous. So yeah, let's look at Rocky. Rocky's this irredeemable guy, he's just a dick. You see him throughout the movie, you build up this hatred for him. Let's look at Abby on the other hand. Abby, as a character, is no more guilty of anything than Ellie is. In fact, you could easily make the argument that Ellie's the real villain in this one. Much like Ellie, Abby showed remorse for what she did, like they're two peas in the same pod. They're both two humans who did bad things and felt the remorse. Especially if you look at Abby. She was saved by Joel, but because of the hatred and the revenge she felt for him, she still killed him, no matter how he may have grown since what he did to her dad. This remorse caused the character to grow, so next time she was saved by a past enemy, she would return the favour and save them back instead of holding on to old grudges and, killing them. This is all to show that The Last of Us Part 2 is morally ambiguous. You play as Abby to recontextualise everything you've done as Ellie, to make Ellie look like a monster for what she's done, but that's not to say Ellie's an evil character, because she feels remorse just like Abby does. My point basically is you can't compare something like Superman with clear-cut good guys and bad guys to something like The Last of Us, where there are no conventional good guys and bad guys, they're all just characters. Of course it's satisfying to see the bad guy get punished, but Abby really isn't a bad guy. She's just another human like Ellie in this fucked up world that they found themselves in. He then goes on to have a bit of a cry about letting Joel's killer go.
After the journey is over and she finally reaches Abby after the audience has been forced to play as Abby through this game at time, finally Ellie reaches Abby. They fight and eventually Ellie lets her walk free. You let Joel's killer walk free. This is awful. This is terrible storytelling.
I can counter this by going back to my original point, which is that sometimes what a character wants at the beginning of the story isn't necessarily where their arc leads them. I say sometimes, but it's actually quite common. Ellie's choice to forgive Abby, I think, was great. When you really think about it, forgiveness is central to the character's motivation throughout the whole of the game. This is demonstrated via this final flashback you get with Joel.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
That was the night before Joel died, and you see that Ellie never got the chance to forgive him. He got killed. Which I think is why she was so fucking hellbent and why watching him die tore her up so much. Of course it would have affected her so much regardless if they were good, but the fact that she had no closure with him, that must have eaten her up inside. It's like you hear about people who didn't get to say goodbye to their family members before they died, and how it eats them up inside years and years after. Ellie sees firsthand the effect her inability to forgive has on everyone, herself included, and so the choice to finally learn to forgive at the end, I think is absolutely fantastic. You could make further parallels with The Old Man from Up, with both of them having physical representations of, the thing they can't move on from. For The Old Man from Up, it's the house. For Ellie, it's Joel's guitar. At the end, they both leave them and try to move on, and I think that's a good art, that's satisfying. He then tries to make the point that they'd done Joel dirty, which they just didn't.
But it goes all the way back to the beginning of why did you treat Joel like this? Why did he have to end up in the place where he would never be? Joel is not that dumb. Joel is very smart. Joel is intelligent. And you made him out to be an idiot. to find himself in that position and then to see him killed in that manner.
A big thing in the first Last of Us was like a kind of theme of, if you have connections in this world, it's just going to blow up in your face.
But let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. A partner. Somebody I had to look after. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing. Getting you killed.
And a lot of it was Joel defying that worldview that he had adopted by finding Ellie. Like, he learned to make connections again, and he learned to like have relationships because of Ellie and how she brought that kind of daughter back into his life that he was lacking. So the fact that Joel is much more trusting in the sequel makes complete sense. The fact that he's part of a community and everything, that's the payoff from his arc in the first game. I'm starting to think that you guys don't understand what a character arc is like. You know, characters do change over time, right? So the fact that Joel is trusting enough to reveal his name makes complete sense. Like, it's not a dumb move at all. Well, I guess it was kind of a dumb move because it got him killed. But it's not lazy writing. Like, it makes complete sense from where the character would have gone, you know? Another reason why he's not dumb is because he just saved Abby. He had no reason to believe she'd turn on him. Like, it's such a specific situation that Joel found himself in. To call him dumb for confirming that his name is Joel is fucking stupid. And Joel's character is still central to this plot. Like, he pops up in various flashbacks with Ellie, which are like great scenes. They aren't just trying to tug on your heartstrings by showing you a dead character. They actually serve a purpose. Like, the first flashback serves as a tragic reminder of Ellie's innocence, while also planting the seeds of doubt that Ellie had in Joel about like whether he might be lying about what happened at the hospital at the end of the first game. And then the other flashbacks are just that seed of doubt sprouting, and you get to see the effect that had on their relationship, which I think is like super interesting. That's really one of the things I wanted to see out of this game. And on top of that, Joel as a character is central to both of our protagonists' arcs. I mean, I guess Abby's technically the antagonist, but it doesn't matter. With Ellie, obviously, you know, we have the revenge motivation that she wants to get revenge, but also it is Joel who kind of drove her to forgive Abby as well. So he's still a central character. We do actually get like a lot of time with the character, despite the fact he dies like in the first few hours. He's still major to the plot. So to say that in the sequel Joel didn't get enough, or he wasn't a relevant enough character, or they did him dirty, I think it's just silly. He then talks about how Naughty Dog have actually been taking down videos about their game, which I would be agreeing with you that that's pretty indefensible. Like, you can't censor people's opinions. But when you think about the fact that a lot of these videos of people discussing spoilers about their game before the game comes out, I think it's fair enough to want to shut people up who are spoiling the game. Look back to before the release of Avengers Endgame. The Russos put out a letter, I'm pretty sure, that got shared about, that was basically telling people not to spoil it, because I'm pretty sure that that got some plot leaks. I actually found this post from 6 days ago, which is the same guy. He got his Twitter account suspended. By the way, it's the 23rd today, so this would have been before the release of the game. He got his Twitter account taken down for sharing Naughty Dog memes. But the fact is, I don't think they're worried about like the bad publicity, because the game still sold like hell. And plus, like, nowadays any publicity is good publicity. But it's probably just the fact that their game had got spoiled. Like, I think Video Game Donkey says it best.
Then, a haunted ghoul uploads huge chunks of the game onto YouTube. They kept this shit secret for 4 years, and then right at the finish line, somebody has to come in and ruin the magic like a little bitch.
Imagine you're in their shoes. You'd been working on this thing for years through thick and thin delays, and you're finally at the finish line, and then it gets fucking leaked and spoiled all over the internet. Of course you'd want to shut people up. It makes complete sense. I think this is the last point he makes before he just kind of does a little outro, whatever.
No one is upset that Joel died. Not in isolation. It's not about the fact that Joel died. It's about the fact that you had no respect for him. You had no respect for his life or his death. And you showed us that through your lack of storytelling through this entire process.
Sorry, could we just talk real quick about how vague his whole thing about storytelling is? Because, like, what the fuck is a lack of storytelling? What does that mean? He says that Naughty Dog had no respect for Joel's life or death. Bold claims, but completely inaccurate claims. Joel's death is the only death in the game, or one of the only deaths in the game, that gets treated with any weight. Right, let's look at Joel's death.
Please don't do this. Joel, please get up. No!
Now let's look at someone else's.
Jesse.
And back at Joel's.
I'll fucking kill you. No.
Someone else.
Screw it. Let's just...
Right. I've discussed already how Joel's life still meant something to every main character in the game. I've already told you how central the character remained despite already being dead. So I think to say that they treated his life and death with no respect, despite him being the central motivator for every character, for all of their arcs, it's just wrong. He says there's a lack of storytelling, but there's so much of it. We have two main characters with two arcs with a strong message about forgiveness and moral ambiguity. But no, I suppose that's just a lack of storytelling. Do you know what I mean? Like, how is it a lack of storytelling? How? I don't get it. It seems to me like you're upset with the direction they decided to go in, which you're entitled to be upset, you know, that's your opinion. But to call it bad storytelling just because it doesn't go in the direction you wanted it to go in simply isn't adequate. There's actually another video that got made critiquing The Last of Us Part 2 while I was in the process of editing together this video, and it's by a YouTuber called Beat 'em Ups, and I really liked the video. Now, these two videos actually do make some of the same points, and I still equally disagree with both of them. However, I think Beat 'em Ups' video is how to do a critiquing video, whereas Geeks and Gamers isn't. That's for a few reasons. One being that Beat 'em Ups actually played the game, whereas the guy in this video, Jeremy, admits to not playing it at all.
I'm not playing the game. I have watched all of the content that I could possibly watch, but I'm not purchasing this game.
The other reason is how they both argued their points. Beat 'em Ups is totally honest about his opinion being just because the choices the game made weren't for him.
My opinions on the story are my own, and while I don't agree with the direction they took or what they did with the characters, I can respect that Naughty Dog took a risk and tried something different. There are already way too many people review bombing the game without playing it, spreading hate towards the writers, and even the players that actually enjoyed the game.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
I would rather just sit here and say, hey, the story wasn't for me.
He acknowledges the direction they were going in and just says, wasn't for me. And I absolutely respect that. However, Jeremy has he has the same opinion. He's not happy with the choices they've made. But he's hidden this behind some vague pseudo-deep argument about conventions of storytelling that he's just made up. And the trouble is, on the internet, is when someone says something wrong with enough authority, a mob of people just believe them for no reason. So, if you're going to critique The Last of Us Part 2, please just be honest. Don't hide behind some argument about the conventions of storytelling, because the game really, from a storytelling standpoint, it ticks all the boxes. Just be honest that you don't like the choices the game made. And if there are any people out there who don't like the choices this game made, hopefully this video has helped you see the value in the choices it did make. But anyway, that's been me. I hope you liked the video. I hope I've made good points. Feel free to agree or disagree with me in the comments below. I'd love to have a discussion. I'd love it if the guy Geeks and Gamers, if he sees this video, I'd love nothing more for like a discussion with him. it would be awesome. Again, I mean in no way to discredit this man, I'm just disagreeing with him. But yeah, thanks.